Hello and welcome to Kitco Mining's Investments Trends with me, Paul Harris, in which we're going to take a closer look at Fury Goldmines, which trades on the New York Stock Exchange American and Toronto Stock Exchanges under the ticker FURY. Fury is exploring for gold in Quebec and Nunavut in Canada and has just announced a 4.3 million Canadian investment from Agnico Eagle Mines. That increases the major stake in the junior from 2.3% to 6.3% and up to a possible 9.9% if Agnico exercises the Fury warrants that it holds. To tell us more is CEO Tim Clark. Tim, welcome to Kitco.
Oh, it's great to be here. It's been a little while, so it's nice to see you.
Well, we have a lot to catch up on, and of course the financing that I mentioned at the top. Now, it's always good for a junior to get recognition and support from a larger gold company, but this is not Agnico's first investment in Fury. What is the history of Fury's relationship with Agnico?
Well, my relationship goes back 25 years ago. I spent over 20 years in the capital markets working with Agnico. So I know their executive team really well. And more importantly, this company was probably the one I spent the most time with and connected the most investors with, because I think they have a standalone, unique process in how they invest and develop their culture of their company. I think they take a lot of time. They typically seed the junior names and take various stakes along the way. And this is kind of what's happened with Fury. Mind you, the 4 million and change that we raised with Agnico this time was probably the hardest I've had to work for that kind of money. But it goes and says volumes about the way Agnico values their investments, and they have to technically be sound. And we spent a lot of time working with their geology team and their corporate development team to make sure that this is up to par. And it's not just the asset, but also a validation, in my view, that we are acting in good faith for investors. As they've told me, historically speaking, we know that investing in a junior, you're not necessarily going to hit the big bonanza, right out of the gate or anything. But what we want you to do is spend our money wisely, be strategic in how you put it into the ground, and that's what we do. And so I think we're feeling very good about this investment, and I think it says a lot more than people realize.
Now, Agnico's CEO, Ammar Al-Joundi, is definitely a friend of the show. We've had him on several times. And it sounds like they really put you through the ringer for this investment. And I assume that it was quite an extensive due diligence process into the asset itself, as you mentioned, Tim, into the team and into your proposed work program. What was it they were looking for? And what did they want to see from you?
Well, they want to see potential upside, and I'm not going to speak for Agnico personally, although I know them really well and I have my opinions. But I think they're the best mining company out there right now, and they deserve the success they have for a reason. I know that Sean Boyd historically has said, before even Ammar came along, that his view is that Nunavut in the Arctic is the place of the future for mining. It's where the most undiscovered potential is. And we're chasing a lot of ounces these days by a lot of these companies. And I think as they've moved their Hope Bay into development, it's opened up a pipeline position for a junior company to come in there and kind of be part of that pipeline. Pipelines are very important for these bigger companies. They got to develop the future potential. And what we have is junior that's unique is that it's a 300-kilometer greenstone belt up in the Arctic. It's much bigger than most juniors would be able to get their hands on. It's a huge property. It's unexplored. And what we've done is spend some time looking at the differences between the iron formations and shear zones. And there's some real questions and excitement from our last drilling up there and from our targeting last summer. And, in a sense, they agreed, and that it was worth putting the money in to develop it.
Now, in a moment, we're going to talk about what the use of proceeds will be. But before we get there, obviously, it's great to get some money. But in addition to the financial support, how else does the support from Agnico manifest itself?
Well, from the beginning, when we first got their initial investment 3 years ago, we meet with them on a quarterly basis. We go over our resources and how we're thinking about the drilling. They've offered us their expertise. We absolutely will be, pushing our program that we have planned past their guys. They couldn't be better to work with, easier to connect with, and it's world class. It's world class, and we're thrilled to be part of it. And they have opened their arms in every respect and supported what we're doing.
Now, the majority of that 4.3 million raised, some $3.9 million of those proceeds, are to be used for exploring your Committee Bay project in Nunavut. And as you mentioned, that's a 300-kilometer long prospective greenstone belt. You've got a 2023 resource there of about 1.3 million ounces, grading about 7.8 grams per ton across all categories. Three Bluffs deposit there. What is going to be your work program there this summer? What are you spending that 3.9 million on?
So primarily, historically, we had some pretty exciting drill holes 3 or 4 years ago, and we went back and retargeted and re-looked at the core samples. And what it showed us is that typically you see these discoveries and ounces coming out of iron formations, but what we hit was in a shear zone, which has actually changed the way we've looked at the potential upside. And we went back to the core resource, and a lot of our results are explained by this shear zone. And this is what not only Agnico is interested in, but about some other companies as well, because it unlocks potential. Shear zones go for miles potentially. And so that's the main focus, to go up there and circle around and find out and step out and see what's really there. Because if we hit more of the same in the same area, it will kind of really create a lot more excitement around adding ounces and size to that resource. As well, one of we're also interested in showing how the property develops, because it's a big property. And we've gone out and done sampling this past summer, and we found we're picking up 30 grams samples on the surface, and no one's ever put any drills behind these. And we'd like to do the same and show Agnico that the property's got exploration. That's what a lot of these producers don't want. They just don't want just a resource. They want to be able to see that there's big excitement. And this is where you go in the Arctic. This is big time. This is big 800-pound gorillas. And that's what gets these bigger companies excited, because they need big ounces up there. The other part of the money is going to be used to stage fuel up there, because we'll be going through all our fuel this year. You have to think ahead. And so part of the money is a step into not just this summer's program, but into next summer's program. And depending on the results we get, we as a company at Fury are prepared to put a lot more money behind this to follow up.
Now, high potential, but also exploration in the Arctic is a big ticket item, which is perhaps why there aren't that many junior explorers there. You're up in the Arctic Circle. I imagine it's quite expensive operating there. How far does $3.9 million get you? What's the drilling cost?
Sure, we'll get about 5,000 meters out of it. And it's not, in one way, it's not a lot, but it's going to be able to test a lot of our theories. But we also operate, because there is so much money spent historically, we have quite a bit of machinery. We've got 3 drills. We've got a camp for 100 people. We got an airstrip. So we're able to operate and drill for less than $700 a meter, where most juniors are drilling and majors are drilling for $1,000 to $1,200 a meter. And that was one of the things that their senior geologist was excited about at Agnico, was that we were so efficient with our money. And that was an attractive quality as well. So, it's going to be a great project. It's going to be a big swing. Investors ought to be paying attention to this because getting validated by a major company like Agnico is a big deal. And this asset, as it sits in Fury's portfolio, has had very little attention, valuation in terms of stock price. And we also, worth mentioning is there aren't very many juniors up there, but we have been fortunate. We've got quite a bit of money in a company called Dolly, Varden Silver. We own over 14% of it. It's worth between 40 and 50 million Canadian. So we have a source of capital unlike any other junior out there. So that's what's been able to enable us to move around a little easier.
Now, Tim, you mentioned that a company like Agnico Eagle is looking for sort of district opportunities. You also mentioned that it's very active in Nunavut already. It's got the Hope Bay development project right at the northern part of Nunavut. Closer to you, it's got its Meadowbank mining complex. How far away is Meadowbank from your project? Looking at a map, you could argue, you could say it's perhaps you're on strike from there, although that's perhaps not the case. Are you in a similar geological environment or structure to Meadowbank?
Well, we work out of Baker Lake, and so our project's to the north, and there's this, I believe, to the northwest. When I went up last summer, we flew into our camp, and then on the way home, we flew over Meadowbank. I'd been there 10 or 15 years ago. It looked completely different than it did when I first went there. It was very well developed. It was a pretty awesome project up in the Arctic. I can't say enough about what they do with their assets. And so we're working. Hope Bay is much further north, but Baker Lake is really sort of the staging place that we all use.
Are there any geological similarities?
Well, we're after gold, and that's what they're after. So, I know there's other projects up there that they're looking at uranium and things like that, but our focus is on high grade gold, and that's what we've got.
Okay. Now, Tim, you mentioned that a lot of companies or Agnico thinks that Nunavut is going to be one of the territories or provinces in the future where a lot of gold is going to be produced. They've got Meadowbank, they've got the Hope Bay development project. B2Gold, another major gold producer, is just about to bring its Goose deposit at its Back River project online. First gold expected there in the coming weeks. But I think it's also right to say that Nunavut, given its proximity to the Northwest Passage sea lane, there's some geopolitical aspects in play, perhaps with the Canadian government, and the Canadian government reminding the world that this part of the world is Canadian territory. Do you get any support or encouragement from the Canadian government from that kind of point of view?
I haven't spoken to the Canadian government myself, but again, I've been in this industry a long time, and I can see the trends, having been involved with the mining and the potential political issues. I think it's pretty clear that the U.S. wants to have more access to the Arctic. It makes a lot of sense for both countries, and there certainly should be a lot more activity. In my personal view, the Arctic or Nunavut is going to be more important, not less, going forward. And again, I am thrilled to be able to have this asset. We have probably one of the largest land packages of any junior up there, and I feel very fortunate to have a reason and an excuse to be talking to the players up there. And we've spoken to B2Gold. They're very active and interested in that part of the world from my point of view. But we'll see. I assume that, these companies are in conversation, but we're still just a junior. So, we're focused on task at hand and what we've got.
Fair enough. Now, it's been a busy start to the year for Fury. In April, you bought Quebec Precious Metals at a 33% premium, for its Sakami project in Quebec. What attracted you to that project, and what's your plan there? Are you going to be doing any work there this year?
No, these are great questions. We're in process, and we plan to be drilling probably in June at Sakami, and it's an asset that we were excited about because the Quebec Precious Metals 2 years ago was a 40 or $50 million company, and given the way this market has treated these juniors, we got it for $4 million. And so what we're seeing there is a lot of potential upside for high grade, and that's what we're going after. What we liked about Quebec Precious Metals overall was they had a very friendly user management. Their CEO has actually now joined our advisory team and is working with us on the rare earths resource called Kippawa, which we got for free. And we were up there last week working with, meeting with the local First Nations and community mayors. I think that's something that investors really haven't paid attention to. That rare earths play could be significant for our company, and it was zero before we got our hands on it. But our program for drilling will start with spring, and we'll move up to Nunavut. So we'll be busy this summer. Then we'll see what we have and go from there. We'd like to continue out in Quebec and keep the flow of information throughout the end of the year.
Now, prior to this year, your flagship project was, and I assume still is, the Eau Claire project in Quebec. Now, you're now going to be working at a commercial bay in Nunavut. You've spoken just now about your plans for Sakami. Well, what's happening at Eau Claire this year? And, it begs the question, you're a relatively modest-sized junior working 3 projects at the same time. How feasible is it?
Well, we've been very targeted what we have, and we've also spent a lot of time prepping what we want to drill, so it's going to be more productive. And so when we'll work out the Sakami camp, it's not that far from our Eau Claire camp. And what we're doing right now is sort of evaluating where we want to be in Eau Claire. We've got almost 1.9 million ounces at the resource. We've had some feedback where we think for very little drilling we could shore that up and to be a potential resource to build. And then we have these anomalies that we've developed out on the broader property. The southern line of the property goes 30 kilometers along the Canard Deformation Zone, and we've got 14 to 15 different anomalies that we have not actually drilled yet. We drilled Serendipity last year, and we had a new discovery, and we're kind of debating, where to go from there. But we don't feel overwhelmed. We've got a very good team on the ground in Quebec. We've got a lot of history working there, and financially, we've got about $7.5 million in the treasury right now, and again, $40 to $50 million in Dolly Varden money. So most companies are sort of more worried about that. We've not had a problem raising money, but we're going to stage out these exploration projects throughout the year, not just all at once.
Okay, so with the spending the Arctic about 3.9 million this year, working at Sakami and Eau Claire, where do you think your cash balance will be by the end of the year?
We've always tried to maintain at least a couple $1 million in the treasury at year end. It's just for prudence sake. And so I would expect us to head that direction as well. Again, it's a pending situation how we raise money. The good news is, we're opportunistic because we've got several different ways to do it. There's always selling Dolly Varden shares. We've got some other additional assets in our that we own. We also can raise hard dollars as well as flow through dollars.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit more about those Dolly Varden shares. today's price, they're valued at somewhere between 40 to 45 million Canadian, which is about half your market capitalization. I imagine, if you're not able to raise equity in the future, you've got that option to sell those. But that aside, under what conditions would you sell them, or would you think of selling them, and what for?
We've sold a little pieces over the last couple of years. We recently sold 1 million shares in the market for about $3.5 million. And it was very easy to do it. There's a lot of liquidity in that stock. Sean Kun is very supportive, and we work in conjunction with Dolly Varden when we do sell some shares. But again, we don't just blow the shares out. We use them strategically when we feel we've got something worth investing in, and so its use of funds really sort of is the determination of it. We've been very supportive on Dolly. We haven't gone out and just bailed on them, and because of the share price. We've tried to be consistent because we own so many shares underneath that the Dolly needs to be structurally set without a big overhang from us. But we also are a big believer in the silver play. I mean, I think silver is going to go much higher. There's probably 4 or 5 names in all of the silver space that are legit takeout targets, and Dolly Varden is one of them. And they're getting a lot of attention. We've brought in some big investors with them. I know Sprott's gotten into them. Hecla increased their percentage recently by swapping out some land to combine with Dolly. Dolly's going to be a British Columbia Golden Triangle play in silver. Simple as that. And in my view, it's not a question of if, it's just when. And so we're excited for them, and we're not in a rush to sell the shares.
I completely agree with you there. I had the pleasure and privilege to do a site visit to Dolly Varden last year. Now, Tim, we've covered a lot of ground in this conversation, so maybe let's end with sort of what are the 2 or 3 main catalysts for Fury Goldmines this year?
Well, I think the drilling is going to be a big catalyst, and that's something that we want to see more at Fury is success in drilling. Last year was a stage to get up and do a lot of sort of the geochem work. And we're going to reap the benefits this year. Going up to Nunavut is a big swing for the company. I think it's exciting. These are the kind of holes that investors want to see, because if we hit something, it should have a lot of impact on the stock price. Sakami is the same thing. It's that whole area is sort of a land play. Eleanor was recently sold to Dilmar, a private equity company out of Indonesia. We hear good things about them, and we are hopefully going to build a lot more ounces around their Eleanor project, which could be helpful to them down the road. And then the back half of the year, we're evaluating Eau Claire. It's our absolute flagship resource, and we're hoping to do some things with that property as well. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, as a reminder, Fury Goldmines trades on the NYSE American and TSX under the ticker FURY. Tim Clark, thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, it's great to see you again. So take care.
And of course, if you like what you see, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'm Paul Harris, and this is Kitco Mining.